No. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is.
The David Jenkins Memorial Drinks Trolley. What are you selecting for us from there?
Well, I thought we could have a nice Austrian white today. So a Gruner Veltliner is very, very tasty. So why not a very large glass of that for a Monday?
Okay, well, that seems... I've got no idea what that tastes
No
like, but
idea.
I'm sure it'll be sweet.
It's a bit like a Riesling. No, it's not. It's not that sweet. Quite dry.
I'll take that as your top tip. Thank you. Today's confession comes from Nigel. You should not indulge in any of the things that Nigel gets up to.
Good.
Oh, dear.
So, this is my confession from some 51 years ago. Sadly, and inevitably, a few of the main people involved have passed. But not because of the confession. just
Good. Good to know.
Good.
natural aging process.
Yeah.
Just aging.
Yeah. From 1971, I was sent to a private school in the south of the UK. Let's call it St Custard's, as we
Again.
normally do.
Yeah.
My best friend, Peason, and myself loved this school as we both appeared to have very different needs from most of the other students. It turns out I have dyslexia, and this meant poor learning abilities in reading and writing. Peason was similar, hence the friendship. Peason and I were often asked to leave classes like maths, English, German,
Wow.
definitely French, but excelled in copperwork, woodwork, bookbinding, and canoe building.
Wow.
This is the stuff.
Canoe building.
I want to have a canoe building lesson.
Amazing.
Bookbinding. Anyway, I made it through most of my school years with some minor upsets. That is until they phoned my father and explained he was wasting his money. Peason and I, plus a small group of others who had also, in quotes, misbehaved in class, were often sent to the science lab for exclusion class. Different times.
Yeah.
These classes were run by a long-suffering but very tolerant teacher called Mr. Arbuthnot. Inevitably.
Again.
In these lessons, we were asked what would we like to study? What would we like to learn about? Well, Peason and I suggested the internal combustion engine. So we took a Lambretta engine apart and then put it back together
Wow.
again. For testing it, we got 4 Saturday detentions, as apparently riding it through school was not a good plan. So anyway, having done that and had the scooter removed, we asked, could we learn about gunpowder?
Oh, no.
This is where it all sort of goes wrong. Mr. Arbuthnot happily continued to teach us in the history from the monks who discovered it and how they made it. Then we followed its early use in fireworks to its use in weapons.
Yeah.
The later lessons were held in the chemistry lab, and trying to make the gunpowder is not easy.
Good.
Just
So too.
reassuring. We were allowed to take home small amounts of the 3 ingredients and experiment with different mixes, but this had to be done with our parents' permission
Oh.
and in attendance.
Oh, right. Well,
Of
that's
course.
okay.
Written reports on
Is
what
it?
was done had to be handed in weekly. Much to Peason's horror, my father and I were quite good at this and got excellent results. At this point, I should say the small pile of chemicals was never larger than 1/4 of a teaspoon. Okay, I think I'm a bit reassured. When lit, this gave a very bright flash and a huge puff of smoke, just like in all those chemistry sets you could buy at the time. Peason got quite obsessed with it, and on my final day at school, he excitedly told me that he'd got the blend just right. He was going to show me at lunchtime, or maybe during our English O-level. Yes, that's... Yes. We all filed into the classroom, and Mr. Grimes, the head teacher, settled us down and walked around checking what was on the desks. Peason sat to my right in the front row of the classroom. He pulled the corner of a plastic bag through a hole in the bottom of the desk, and he dared me to light it. This is very different to my English O-level. The exam started, and all was quiet except for Mr. Grimes, some 6.5 feet tall, striding up and down the row. I did what I could of the exam, but as usual couldn't do a lot. So having exchanged eye contact with Peason several times and watched him tug the corner of the bag, decided the dare was on. How big was this small bag poking through the desk, and how big would the puff of smoke be? Well, with heart racing and Mr. Grimes walking towards the back of the room, now was the time. My heart was racing as I moved my lighter...
Lighter?
What are you doing with the lighter? As I moved my lighter
lighter.
under Peason's desk. Well, Peason had perfected his blend, as it turned out, and there was a very large bang, and the lid of his desk blew off. Peason and his chair flew backwards, and a huge puff of smoke filled the entire room. Grimes rushed to Peason, and whilst leaning over him, lying prostrate on the floor, shouted, "You horrible little man, get out!" At this point, I called across. Genuinely, I said, "Please, sir, it wasn't him, it was me." I was marched to the head's office and got to start college a year earlier than I should. And my father never asked about the desk, but he got to save some money. That was the end of my education. I am not seeking forgiveness from Peason as he continued to get into trouble with me, but from my classmates whose exam I spoiled. And I don't believe ever knew who the culprit was due to us both being ushered out with the fire alarm ringing in their ears. I'd like to say sorry to all the teaching staff who in actual fact did succeed in turning out a good, well-skilled student, even if it wasn't the skill that they were actually paid to teach. Well, as I said, a story from 1971 where that kind of thing was perfectly fine, apparently.
Yeah.
Sister Susie from the pub.
Well, Nigel, I just don't think I can forgive you. You shouldn't have done any of that. It sounds very, very dangerous. And yeah, think of all those people taking their exams. And also, it's a private school, so all those people's parents have paid for them to be there, and all that money potentially wasted if you ruined it. So no forgiveness from me.
A gunpowder explosion in an English O-level.
Yeah.
Brother from another.
Well, I mean, you've got to, I suppose you have to admire this school for coming up with canoe building and take the gunpowder home and try it with your mum and dad. See what happens. I'm going to forgive just because that's an innovative way of educating the next generation and an encouraging initiative, isn't it? Because you won't do that again, will you? You won't light gunpowder on your table again.
Don't try this at home.
Definitely don't do
Don't
that.
try it.
And definitely.